Chapter 2, God's Purpose in Creation. Many are the plans in a woman's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Proverbs 19:21. The source of so many of our problems in this world, including the misunderstandings and mistreatments of women, is that we have lost our understanding of what it means to be human as God created us. We have lost our sense of purpose. I am convinced that in every country in the world, both men and women are suffering from this ignorance of purpose. The best thing for us to do is to discover and live in the original plan of the one who created humanity. Only then will we learn the inherent nature and rights of women and men, so that both female and male can live in freedom and fulfillment. In the next chapter, we will discover a crucial aspect of God's original purpose for humanity, one that has been forgotten by most of the world for thousands of years. This purpose is key to our understanding of how God made men and women equal, unique, and complementary in design. To gain the fullest understanding of this aspect of creation, however, we must first briefly consider the significance of what it means that we have been created purposely by God. To gain the fullest understanding of this aspect of creation, however, we must first briefly consider the significance of what it means that we have been created purposefully by God. When we understand this concept, we will see how important it is for our well-being that we discover God's purpose for us. 7 principles of purpose. The following 7 principles of purpose will help us to understand God's original intent for us in creation. Number 1, God is God of purpose. I'm going to repeat that. God is a God of purpose. Number 2, God created everything with a purpose. Number 3, not every purpose is known to us because we have lost our understanding of God's original intent for us. Number 4, where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. Number 5, to discover the purpose of something, never ask the creation, ask the Creator. I'm going to repeat that. Number 5, to discover the purpose of something, never ask the creation, ask the Creator. Number 6, we find our purpose only in the mind of our Maker. Number 7, God's purpose is the key to our fulfillment. God is God of purpose. God is a God of purpose. God is a purposeful being. He purposes, He plans, and then He carries out His plans. God always knew what He wanted to create before He made it. Similarly, He always knows what He wants to carry out before He accomplishes it. This theme is found throughout the Bible, which we can consider God's handbook for our lives. Here are various expressions of His purposeful nature. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Genesis 1:3. But the plans of the Lord stand firm forever. The purposes of His heart through all generations. Psalms 33 and 11. The Lord Almighty has sworn, surely as I have planned, so it will be, and as I have purposed, so it will stand. Isaiah 14 and 24. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. Isaiah 55 and 10 through 11. God has saved us and called us to a holy life, not because of anything we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. This grace was given us in Christ Jesus before the beginning of time. 2 Timothy 1 and 8 through 9. Men swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. Hebrews 6 and 16 through 17. God is purposeful, and he always carries out his purpose. I want to direct your attention to Isaiah 14 and 24 and Hebrews 6 and 16 through 17, which illustrates a vital aspect of God's purposeful nature. First, the verse from Isaiah, the Lord Almighty has sworn, surely as I have planned, so it will be, and as I have purposed, so it will stand. Isaiah 14 and 24. The first part of the verse says that God has sworn an oath. Now, when people swear an oath, they have to find something higher than themselves by which to swear. Men swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. Hebrews 6 and 16. We usually swear by the Bible or by some greater institution. There is only one problem with God swearing an oath. There is no one above him, so God has to swear by himself. If you were called to be a witness in court, you would be asked to swear on the Bible. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. If you were to lie, it would be the same as desecrating the integrity of the Bible, and you would destroy your own integrity as well. If you break your vow, then whatever you swear by is desecrated or destroyed. When God swears an oath regarding something, he has to fulfill what he swore to do, because he is totally faithful to himself. God doesn't want us to have any doubt about this aspect of his nature. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. Hebrews 6 and 17. We see this principle expressed in the second part of Isaiah 14:24, which says, surely as I have planned, so it will be. God is saying, in effect, when I swear to do something, before that plan fails, I will stop being God. The third part of the verse says, as I have purposed, so it will stand. Again, he is saying, when I purpose to do something, and when I give something to purpose, before that purpose would change, I will stop being God. God isn't ever going to stop being God. So when he swears an oath regarding something, you can be certain that he is going to do what he has said. If we took at the verse that follow Isaiah 14 and 24, we read, this is the plan determined for the whole world. This is the hand stretched out over all nations. For the Lord Almighty has purpose, and who can thwart him? Stop, interfere with, or cancel his purpose. His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back? Isaiah 14 and 26 through 27. In essence, God is saying, my purpose will be accomplished. No one can interfere with it or hinder it. When I give a purpose to something, your plans, ideas, opinions, perceptions, and prejudice about what you think is purpose should be are inapplicable. What you think about what I have purpose is not going to change my purpose and design. And before my purpose could change, I would have to stop being God. Let me ask you, if it comes to a contest between you and God, who do you think is going to win? If God sets a purpose for something, there isn't anything we can do to change it. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Proverbs 19 and 21. What we need to keep in mind, however, is that if we try to change His plans, we're working against ourselves, because He created us for a good and has our best interests in mind. Before God's purpose would change, He would cease being God. That means that since God made the female and the male for certain purposes, and He designed them to fulfill those purposes, there isn't anything you and I can do to change them. We cannot alter His design. Psychology may try to tell us the purpose of women and men, but psychology cannot influence God's purpose and design. They are unchangeable. All psychology can do is investigate and explore the mysteries of the nature of women and men. Psychology can never change their nature. Theology may also try to tell us the purpose of humanity, but theology cannot influence God either. What theology says about God and men is only as true as it accurately expresses their nature. Theology is very limited if it is based on only what a person has experienced. A person should never build a doctrine based solely on his experience with God or what he perceives his experience to have been. Don't ever confuse your limited knowledge of God with biblical doctrine, because your knowledge may change next week. What you know about God today is what He has shown you so far. Tomorrow, you will know and understand more. The Bible is God's revelation of Himself to us, and it is our most reliable source of His nature and purposes. God created everything with a purpose. Let us now consider the nature of purpose itself. Purpose is the original intent of the Creator in the creation of something. It is what is in the Creator's mind that causes Him to fashion this product in a certain manner. In short, purpose motivates the action of creation. This results in precision production. Since God is a God of purpose, He never created anything hoping that it would turn out to be something viable. He first decided what it was to be. Then He made it. This means that He always begins with a finished product in mind. Consider these questions. Why are humans different from animals? Why is a bird different from a fish? Why is the sun different from the moon? Why does one star differ from another star? Why are women different from men? I want to answer these questions with a statement. Everything is the way it is because of why it was created, because of its purpose. The why dictates the design. God created everything with a purpose, and He created everything with the ability to fulfill its purpose. God's purpose were always planned out ahead of time. Everything was already made in mind of the Maker before He created it. What this means is that God never gives a purpose to something after He has made it. Rather, He builds everything to fulfill the specific purpose He already had in mind for it. God designed everything to function in its purpose. And everything is the way it is because its purpose requires it to be so. The purpose of a thing determines its nature, its design, and its features. To understand how we function as human beings, we have to go to the manual given to us by the designer and the manufacturer who created us. 1 Corinthians 15:38 affirms the principle that God made everything according to its intended purpose, but God gives a seed, a body, as He has determined, and to each kind of seed He gives its own body. Let's carefully consider this instruction from God's manual. When it says God gives a seed, a body, this means that He designs this seed as He determines. Notice that He gives the seed a body as He has determined. To determine means to make a decision before you start. So God determined what He wanted, and then He made it the way He wanted it to be. The purpose of something determines its nature, design, and features. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed, perhaps of wheat or something else. But God, 37-38, but God, we're talking about God, Incorporated. He's the manufacturer. He created everything. God gives it a body as He has determined, and to each kind of seed He gives its own body. All flesh is not the same. VV 38-39. God said that all flesh is not the same. Let's say it another way. All species are different. God determined that they would be different. Therefore, they are different. Men have one kind of flesh. Animals have another. Birds another. And fish another. V39. Of course, the word flesh in this instance does not refer to meat. Instead, it refers to the nature of the creature, its characteristic design. God determined that human beings would be different from animals in their nature. He also determined that birds and fish would have distinct natures. The passage goes on to say, there are also heavenly bodies and there are earthly bodies. But the splendor, glory, NKJV, of the heavenly bodies is one kind, and the splendor, glory, NKJV, of the earthly bodies is another. The sun has one kind of splendor, glory, NKJV, the moon another, and the stars another, and the star differs from star in splendor, glory, NKJV. 1 Corinthians 15:40-41. The sun is meant to do a job that the moon isn't supposed to do. So God created the moon different from the sun. The moon is made to do its job and no other job. The moon does not give light. It reflects light. Therefore, God did not put any light on the moon. God also made stars of different sizes and luminosity. for his own purpose. The point is that God made everything the way it is because of what it is supposed to do. To further illustrate this principle, look at the clothes you are wearing. Look at them. You will see that the designer and manufacturer created them with purpose. The purpose was to produce a garment that you would wear to cover your body and to keep you either cool or warm. In order to fulfill this purpose, the designer had to fashion your clothes in such a way that they would do the job and do it efficiently. Notice how your clothes fit your body. Your sleeves are not down to your feet. Your collar is not around your waist. Your clothes were designed for the purpose for which they were made. The same thing is true of other types of products. There's another aspect of purpose and design that we need to consider. Suppose you buy a camera. Even though you may not understand everything about how your camera was made, its components are still necessary for the fulfillment of its purpose. Just because you don't understand the nature and product or can't operate it, you shouldn't get angry. There probably isn't anything wrong with it, you just don't know how it works. If you can't operate your camera, it doesn't mean that you should throw it away. You don't understand what was in the mind of those who made the camera, because that is their area of expertise. However, they are aware of that, so they provided a manual for you to refer to as you use your camera. We have disregarded the manual and then become frustrated because our relationships aren't working. When it comes to male-female relationships, it is as if we have bought the camera without proper training on how to operate it. We have disregarded the manual and then we have become frustrated or angry because we haven't been able to get our relationships to work, usually after paying good money for them too. When many people get married, they spend vast amounts of money on the wedding, but they don't know how a marriage is supposed to function. Now, even though we have thrown away the manual, we still often look around for people and advice. Many people turn to popular talk shows, magazines, and books to find out how to make their relationships work. However, many of these media dispense cheap psychology. Be careful when you start taking their advice on relationships, because half of the people on those programs and in those articles aren't married and never were, and they probably can't stay married if they are. We have disregarded the manual and then become frustrated because our relationships aren't working. God is our designer and manufacturer. He knew exactly what he wanted when he thought of the female. He had her in mind before he made her. He first concluded what he wanted, then he created her and caused her to function in exactly the way he had planned. He did the same thing with the male. He created him after he had finished deciding what the male was supposed to be. God did not venture out into the manufacturing business hoping he would create something that would work. He started out with the original design in mind, and his finished product parallels his intended purpose. He is the only one who knows how humanity is intended to successfully function. We have disregarded the manual and then become frustrated because our relationships aren't working. Not every purpose is known to us. So everything in life, everything that God has created has a purpose and is designed accordingly to that purpose. However, not every purpose is known to us. Humanity has lost its knowledge of God's purpose. It has not respected the fact that God's creation and his directions for living were established for a specific reason, that if that purpose is abandoned, we will never function properly as human beings. In chapter 3, we will learn the extent of what transpired when humanity rejected God's plan. What we need to recognize at this point is that the results of this abandonment has been debilitating for us. We have grown further and further away from God's original intent and design, so that we function less and less as we were meant to. This has left us incomplete, frustrated, and in conflict with one another. The first chapter of Romans explains that when people reject or are ignorant of the purposes of God, they end up continually abusing themselves. They abuse their bodies, their minds, their relationships, and their talents. Although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Romans 1:21. This verse describes those who did not know the purpose of God and did not even care to find out what it is. Even though they knew something about God and his ways, they did not want him in their lives. They did not want to know what he wanted them to know. They were saying, in effect, keep your opinions about who we are to yourself. God, we know you made us, but mind your own business. We know you're there, but leave us alone. The next verse tells us the result of their decision. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools. V22. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and exchanged natural relations for unnatural ones. VV 25-26. When does the exchange of natural for unnatural take place? It takes place when purpose is either ignored or unknown. Furthermore, since they did not think it was worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, he gave them over to a depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. V28. They did not think it was worthwhile to find out God's purpose for the world or to retain the knowledge of God as to why he made humanity. Humanity has been saying, mind your own business, God. They did not check to find out why God made women and men. They didn't try to find out what God knows about the things he has made. They didn't want to know, so they relied on their own inclinations. The above statements from Romans are descriptions of humanity as a whole. We have rejected knowing God and his purpose, and so God's original intent for us has not been communicated in many of our cultures and traditions. It has been lost or obscured. Instead, distorted views have been passed down so that people do not know how to relate to one another as they were meant to. The problem is that when we do not know how we are to function, we end up abusing one another. Humanity has been saying, mind your own business, God. But when God gave us over, where purpose is unknown, abuse is inevitable. When humanity rejected God, he gave them what they wanted. He gave them over to their passions. Romans 1:24-26. That's not as simple as it might sound. If God had just given us over to what we wanted, the implication might have been that we can succeed in spite of him. But when God gave us over, he also allowed us to experience the inevitable results of our actions. God didn't just say, okay, go. carry on. He said, if you carry on, you're going to end up depraved, because that isn't the way I made you. V28. The principle here is that you cannot move away from God and be successful. You cannot cut off your relationship with the manufacturer and expect to find genuine parts somewhere else. When you ignore the warranty, any part you try to find on your own will not be genuine. You cannot develop into a better product without the help of the manufacturer. God says that when we reject his purpose, he gives us over to a depraved mind. In other words, he's telling us, without me, your mind isn't going to get any better. It will only get worse. Therefore, if we think we can find out how to be better women or men without God, we are in trouble. For the consequences are serious. When we believe that we don't need God, we get worse and worse. How many people have been suffering from these very consequences? If you don't want to live in God's purpose for mankind, then you will end up doing yourself harm. You cannot move away from God's plan and be successful. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Proverbs 19:21. We have many plans, but God has a purpose. Most of the time, our plans are not in harmony with God's purpose. I think it is appropriate to include the concept of opinions or perceptions in the word plans. We have many opinions and perceptions regarding what things should be like or what they are but God has a purpose for everything that he made. Therefore, what you think the purpose of something is and what its purpose actually is could be different. The problem is that if your plans are not in keeping with God's purpose, then you will either suffer yourself or inflict abuse on others, because where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. If you don't know the purpose of a thing, all you do is abuse it, no matter how sincere, committed, serious, or innocent you are. We shouldn't attempt to use anything until we find out why it exists, because when we don't know what the Maker intended for it, we will not treat his creations appropriately. We need to fully understand that where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. If you don't know what was in the mind of a maker of a thing, all you can do at best is not use it properly. However, usually you would go beyond that and abuse it. If you don't know the purpose for your existence, then no matter how earnest or sincere you are, all you can do is abuse your life. The most important thing for us to do, therefore, is to find out God's purpose for us. Unless we have this knowledge, we will abuse what he has created. We have been doing that with the woman for thousands of years. What happens when we don't know the real reason and purpose for our existence? The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain in them, because God has made it plain to them. Romans 1:18 through 1:19. The scripture says that the wrath of God is already being revealed from heaven against ungodliness. I believe this statement means that when you turn away from God, because you cause many of your own problems. I'm going to repeat that. When you turn away from God, you cause many of your own problems. I'm going to repeat that. When you turn away from God, you cause many of your own problems. God is not punishing you. Much of your hurt comes in the package of consequences you received as a result of the decision you made to ignore God and his ways. I'm going to repeat that. God is not punishing you. Much of your hurt comes in the package of consequences you received as a result of the decision you made to ignore God and his ways. The burning is in the heat. In other words, you don't need God's intervention to get burned. Just put your hand into the fire. The judgment of putting your hand into the fire is inherent. In the fire itself, you get burned. Here's another illustration of this principle. The judgment for drinking poison is death from poisoning. You don't need God to kill you after you drink poison. I'm going to repeat that. The judgment for drinking poison is death from poisoning. You don't need God to kill you after you drink poison. What this statement is saying is that God doesn't have to do anything to judge you. You judge yourself by your activities, by your participation based on your decisions to live according to your own knowledge. Consequently, you are a victim of your own decisions, not of God's judgment. Some people blame the devil for the results of their actions. Don't blame the devil. He just takes advantage of your decisions. The devil cannot dominate you or force you to do anything. I'm going to repeat that. Some people blame the devil for the results of their actions. Don't blame the devil. He just takes advantage of your decisions. The devil cannot dominate you or force you to do anything. The devil waits for your decision. When you make a bad one, he'll ride it to the end, or just as far as he can, and he'll try to bring you down with it. Satan is not the culprit. The culprit is your rejection or ignorance of God's purpose. You don't know God's purpose for living, and so you abuse your life. Be careful that abuse can cripple or kill you. Even though humanity has turned away from God, He still creates us with gifts and talents that are intended to be used to fulfill His purpose. Yet, since we don't know how they are to be used, we take the talents He has given us and use them against ourselves and others. For example, Romans 1:29 says that one of the manifestations of a depraved mind is unrighteousness or wickedness. Some of the wickedest people in the world are wise when it comes to information. They are sharp people. They're so sharp they can be wicked with class. Some people are gifted, but they use their gifts in such a wicked way that their victims don't know what hit them until it's over. We often use God's gift to hurt others rather than to bless them. Wickedness, greed, and all kinds of depravity can be combined with intelligence and skill and be used for evil purposes. For example, it takes talent to be envious in a truly effective way. Some people hate you, but you don't know it because they're so good at it. They keep you from being successful in your job through well-placed memos to your superiors. If they could just use that energy and talent for good purposes, they could uplift people instead of bringing them down. They abuse the very thing that was given to them to be a blessing to others. When purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. Some of us are excellent at murder. Murder does not just mean stabbing someone with a knife. Jesus said that if you hate someone, it is the equivalent of murder. See Matthew 5:21-22. Some people haven't acted on their feelings, but they have mentally wished for another's death. Slander is another example of this type of murder. We can use the talent of verbal eloquence to assassinate another character with style. Slander doesn't necessarily mean lying about something else. It can mean twisting the truth with the intent to hurt. It takes talent to do that. When some people want to get back at others, they stand up in the public arenas and use their mouths as guns and their words as bullets. When they finish shooting, their victims are dead and everybody knows it. Some of their victims never resurrect from these attacks. A third example of this type of murder is gossip. We all probably have met some excellent, qualified gossips. They train in it. They know how to give you just enough to create a tempting aroma. If some people would take the energy with which they gossip and use it for promoting the gospel, the world would be changed. The skill and talent necessary to carry out some of this behavior comes from God, but it has been perverted because it is not being used for God's purpose. When purpose is unknown, abuse is inevitable. The Apostle Paul told us that everything God made is available to us to do with what we want. Yet, he added a warning. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. 1 Corinthians 6:12. Then he gave an example. He said, food for the stomach and the stomach for food, V13. What was he talking about? He was saying that there is a purpose for everything, but if you don't know the purpose of something, it can enslave you. Not everything is beneficial. I'm going to repeat that. If you don't know the purpose of something, it can enslave you. Not everything is beneficial. Paul was implying that if we are to use food in a way that is beneficial to us, we must understand both the purpose of the stomach and the purpose of food. The stomach and food were made for one another. God designed the stomach for food and food for the stomach so that we could receive nutrition to sustain our physical lives. Yet we can abuse the relationship between the stomach and food by overeating or by eating foods that has no nutritional value. This can cause us to become overweight or lack proper nutrition, resulting in a variety of health problems. When purpose is not known, or when desire prompts us to misuse purpose, abuse is inevitable. Paul was saying that you can use anything you want, but you had better find out what its purpose is if you want to benefit, if you want it to benefit you. If you don't understand the purpose of something, it can become like a curse to you. For instance, some single people become nervous and depressed that they're getting older, and so they marry the first person who comes along. They are permitted to marry. They are of age. It is permissible, but will it be beneficial to them? The criteria for marriage is not merely being old enough, but whether or not it will be beneficial. If you don't have a clear understanding of the purpose of something, it isn't going to benefit you. That is the reason the divorce rate is so high. When purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. These illustrations emphasize what happens when we don't know God's purposes. We end up hurting ourselves or hurting others. Sometimes we do so out of ignorance, but at other times we do so knowingly, at times to assuage our guilt. We even encourage others to continue such abuse. Romans 1:32 says, although they know God's righteous decree, they know what he says in his word, that those who do such things deserve death. They not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. They know what is written in God's word, that those who do wicked things deserve death. See verses 29 and 32. Yet they not only continue to do those things, but they also encourage others in them. When a person is wrong, he feels better if someone else keeps him company in his wrongdoing. If I'm messing up, but you're not messing up, then I really feel messed up. However, if I'm messing up and I tangle you up in this mess, then we can both feel justified in our actions. A person who is willfully ignorant of the purposes of God generally doesn't want anyone else to know them either. Jesus told the Pharisees, the religious leaders of his day, that this is essential what they were doing. They know what is written in God's word, that those who do wicked things deserve death. See verses 29 and 32. Yet they only continue to do those things, but they also encourage others in them. When a person is wrong, he feels better if someone else keeps him company in his wrongdoing. If I'm messing up, but you're not messing up, then I really feel messed up. However, if I'm messing up and I tangle you up in my mess, then we can both feel justified in our actions. A person who is willfully ignorant of the purposes of God generally doesn't want anyone else to know them either. Jesus told the Pharisees, the religious leaders of his day, that this is essentially what they were doing. Many of them knew the truth but refused to accept it. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Matthew 23 and 13. If we ignore or don't know God's purposes for us, we are in danger of hurting ourselves and others. When purpose is known or is rejected, abuse is inevitable. To discover purpose, never ask the creation, ask the Creator. Again, nobody knows a product and how it should work better than the one who made it. In the same way, the one who created the product is the best one to fix when it has become marred. When a potter works on a pot and sees that it has a flaw in it, the potter either removes the clay and starts over, or if the pot already has been fired in the oven, the potter has to smash it and start over. Now, when the clay starts talking back to the potter, something is wrong. See Isaiah 29 and 16. The potter knows better than the pot how the pot should be fashioned. The pot can't say to the potter, you shouldn't have made me this way, because the pot can't see the whole picture the way the potter can. When it comes to the relationship between males and females in society, devaluation of women, we have too often murmured against the potter rather than trying to understand how and why we were created. Moreover, our substitutes for this master design are flawed. Some of us need to have our attitudes, perspectives, and lives remolded. A few of us have gone so far in the wrong direction that we may need a total overhaul. That is why the principles in this book are very serious and very awesome, but also very necessary for the restoration of God's humanity to God's purpose. To discover the purpose, never ask the creation, ask the Creator. Again, nobody knows a product and how it should work better than the one who made it. In the same way, the one who created the product is the best one to fix it when it has become marred. When a potter works on a pot and sees that it has a flaw in it, the potter either removes the clay and starts over, or if the pot already has been fired in the oven, the potter has to smash it and start over. Now, when the clay starts talking back to the potter, something is wrong. See Isaiah 29 and 16. The potter knows better the potter knows better than the pot how the pot should be fashioned. The pot can't say to the potter, you shouldn't have made me this way, because the pot can't see the whole picture the way the potter can. When it comes to the relationships between males and females and society's devaluation of the women, we have too often murmured against the potter rather than trying to understand how and why we were created. Moreover, our substitutes for his master design are flawed. Some of us need to have our attitudes, perspectives, and lives remolded. A few of us have gone so far in the wrong direction that we may need a total overhaul. That is why the principles in this book are very serious and very awesome, but also very necessary for the restoration of humanity to God's purposes. So if you want to discover the purpose of something, never ask the creation, ask the one who made it. The creation might not think it has any worth, but the Creator knows what it's made of. Many people do not think they have any worth or purpose. Yet, the first chapter of our manual tells us God saw all that He had made, and it was very good. Genesis 1:31. There is something good in God's creation. No matter how confused it looks to us, there is something good about every person, even though it may be hard to find. There is something good about everything God has made. The creation, you may not feel it has worth, but the Creator knows what it is made. We need to go to Him and find the good purposes for which He has made us. For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to His good purpose. Philippians 2:13. We find our purpose only in our Maker. When we try to mend our relationships or change society using our own methods, we never totally succeed, and we often utterly fail. We fail because we are trying to bring out change for the wrong reasons and using the wrong methods. That is why we need to go back to the manufacturer and receive his instructions for our lives. The only way for us to succeed is to discover and live in the purposes of our Maker by undergoing our transformation in the way we think about ourselves as human beings. Romans 12:1-2 encourages us to give ourselves to God so that we may receive His principle for living rather than to this world's pattern of living. Offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. In other words, we are not to conform to this world's opinion of humanity, purpose, but be transformed into God's original intent in creation so that we can live in peace with ourselves and others. We do this by presenting our bodies to God so they can line up with His purpose for our bodies, and by presenting our minds to Him so they can line up with His purpose for our minds. Our minds are to be transformed as they are renewed. Then we will truly be able to know what God's will is. Then we will truly be able to know what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Many of us don't know God's perfect purpose for our bodies. We've been abusing them, selling them cheaply with alcohol, drugs, nicotine, or too much food. We've been making a mess of ourselves. Our bodies are meant to be God's temple. When you present your body to the manufacturer, what does He do with it? He fills it with His own Spirit so you can be filled with His life and purpose. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. 1 Corinthians 6:19. When you present your spirit to the manufacturer, it becomes the candle of the Lord. Proverbs 20:27. KJV. An expression of the light of God. It is the same way when you present your mind and soul to your Maker. They are renewed by His word, which is a light of your path. Psalm 119 and 105. David said in Psalm 19 and 7, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. NKJV. God's ways will transform your spirit, your mind, and your outlook. When you present yourself to God and learn from Him, you will understand His purpose. Therefore, in order to pursue God's purpose, you must present yourself to God so that you can know His perfect will. Then you will be transformed so that you can do His perfect will. In this way, His good purpose will be fulfilled in you. God's purpose is the key to our fulfillment. Since everything God created was intentional, we can conclude that the female as well as male was created intentionally. God didn't wonder why He made the woman or what her purpose should be after He created her. He was very clear about why He made this wonderful creation, and therefore we don't have to guess about her either. The female was created to help fulfill God's eternal purpose. His eternal purpose is great, and within His larger purpose, He has many smaller purposes. Both the female and the male are to discover their individual purposes, which are part of God's larger plan. Proverbs 19 and 21 is our foundational scripture for understanding our true purpose of human beings. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. The key thoughts we're addressing here are that God has purpose for everything and that He will always accomplish His purpose in the end. The best way to experience fulfillment in your life is to find God's purpose and then work with Him to fulfill it. In order for the woman truly to fulfill her purpose, she has to understand the purpose of God for humanity. In order for the man truly to fulfill his purpose, he has to understand the purpose of God for humanity. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Romans 12 and 1. Becoming what He has purposed for us is an act of worship to our Creator. God's ideal purposes. The 7 principles of purpose in this chapter clearly show that if we do not know why the female was made, she will be misused or abused. In the chapters that follow, we will learn the purpose, nature, and design of the woman as she was created in the image of God and as she relates to the man. These are God's ideal purposes for women and then which we desire to move toward. However, we must keep in mind that entering into God's purpose will be a continual process of learning and transformation. Therefore, we need to be patient with ourselves. We are starting where we are now, not at the place we should be, and not at the place at which we will arrive. We are starting where we are now, not at the place we should be, and not at the place at which we will arrive. Paul told us in regard to our spiritual growth that we are to forget the things that are behind us and reach for what is ahead of us. We are to press on to the mark, which is the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Philippians 3 and 13, KJV. When Jesus came to earth, He showed us the mark that we are to hit. So whatever He says is what we're supposed to pursue. He showed us God's original plan so that we could have something to aim at. We should never accept what we currently have as the norm. We should never accept what we currently have as the norm. Even though it may be the current trend, if it's not what God intended, it's abnormal. We should never live so below our privilege that we begin to believe a lie and call it truth. When you begin to understand and live in the purpose of God, people may become very uncomfortable with you. When you tell them, look, I know what it is to be a woman. I went to the manufacturer and got the right manual. They may say, oh no, that's an old manual. It's out of date. However, we cannot improve on the original. When we both, women and men, gain an understanding of our uniqueness and purpose in God, we will be able to assist one another in properly understanding and fulfilling the lives God created us to live. We will then also be able to live in right relationship with God and in the freedom and blessing He planned for us in creation. What more when we mend the broken relationships between female and male, both of whom are created in the image of God? We will begin to see healing and new purpose for individuals, communities, and nations of our world. Principles. Understanding the purpose and power of woman. God's purpose in creation. Principles. Number 1, God is a God of purpose. Number 2, when God swears an oath regarding something, He has to fulfill what He swore to do because He is totally faithful to Himself. Number 3, God created everything according to its intended purpose. Number 4, not every purpose is known to us because we have lost our understanding of God's original intent for us. Number 5, where purpose is known, abuse is inevitable. Number 6, you cannot move away from God's plan and be successful. Number 7, if you want to know the purpose of something, never ask the thing itself, ask the one who made it. Number 8, we find our purpose in the mind of our Maker. Number 9, God's purpose is the key to our fulfillment. And that's it for chapter 2. I will see you in chapter 3, the purpose and nature of humanity.